Do you have a detailed plan or do you have a winning strategy? Far too many companies mistake meticulously crafted roadmaps, extensive forecasts, and comprehensive plans for strategy. Yet these documents merely predict the future. Strategy, on the other hand, determines how you'll shape it. The uncomfortable truth is that while you're busy perfecting detailed plans, your boldest competitors, those who understand the crucial difference between planning and strategy, are quietly capturing your market share. This book, How to Win with Strategy, A Plan is Not a Strategy, is your wake-up call. It's designed to free you from the seductive trap of precision planning, guiding you instead toward making strategic choices that create enduring competitive advantage. Inside, you'll explore why those detailed plans you've spent so much time perfecting could actually be holding your organization back rather than fueling growth. You'll see how making coherent, strategic choices can lead to exponential and lasting success, far more than any extensive planning effort. We'll dive into the often overlooked power of trade-offs and why choosing what not to do can solidify your market position. You'll also discover why a simple, clear one-page strategy often proves far more effective than dense 50-page documents. Finally, you'll learn how to adapt quickly to changing conditions without losing your strategic focus or diluting your competitive edge. Strategic clarity isn't about size, complexity, or perfection. It's about focus, decisiveness, and leverage. Regardless of whether you're leading a large team or running a lean startup, this book will provide you with the tools and insights to build strategic coherence and achieve competitive asymmetry. Your competitors might already understand the difference between planning and strategy. Now, it's your turn. Turn strategic clarity into your unfair advantage and transform your organization from merely busy to truly unbeatable. It's time to stop planning and start winning. Chapter 1, The Wake Up. Your quarterly planning deck is 47 slides long. Your roadmap stretches 18 months into the future with color-coded milestones. Your team tracks 23 KPIs across 4 dashboards. You've got Gantt charts, resource allocation matrices, and a beautifully formatted vision statement that took 3 meetings to wordsmith. And you're still losing. While you've been perfecting your planning theater, leaner competitors have been making bold choices and eating your lunch. They don't have better resources or smarter people. They have something more dangerous: strategic clarity. They know exactly where to play and how to win. You're optimizing activity. They're building advantage. This chapter is your intervention. It's time to stop confusing motion with progress, busyness with strategy, and precision with power. The planning trap that's killing your edge. Walk into any leadership meeting and you'll hear the same language. We're on track. Deliverables are green. Q3 milestones achieved. Teams celebrate hitting timelines while margins shrink and competitors gain ground. This is the planning trap, the seductive belief that organized activity equals strategic progress. Planning feels safe because it creates the illusion of control. Spreadsheets don't argue back. Timelines provide comfort in an uncertain world. But here's the brutal truth. Your competitors aren't beating you with better project management. They're beating you with better choices. Consider Netflix in 2007. While Blockbuster was perfecting store operations and optimizing late fees, Reed Hastings made a choice that seemed insane: cannibalize the profitable DVD business to bet everything on streaming. No amount of planning could have predicted the exact trajectory of broadband adoption or content costs. But Hastings understood something Blockbuster didn't. Strategy isn't about predicting the future. It's about positioning for multiple futures. The difference is stark. Plans forecast, strategies choose. Plans assume certainty, strategies embrace uncertainty. Plans optimize the current game, strategies change the game entirely. Your beautiful roadmaps are precision theater. They create a false sense of certainty while avoiding the hard choices that create real advantage. Every hour spent perfecting forecasts is an hour not spent deciding where to play and how to win. When comfort becomes your competitor's weapon. Comfort is the enemy of differentiation. When you try to please everyone, serve every market, and avoid difficult trade-offs, you drift into the deadly middle, that gray zone where customers see you as interchangeable with every other option. Your competitors with courage are making asymmetric bets. They're choosing customers to win, not everyone to please. They're accepting trade-offs that you're too scared to make. While you add features and complexity, they're building coherent systems where every piece reinforces their chosen edge. Take Southwest Airlines under Herb Kelleher. While major carriers were adding first-class cabins, hub-and-spoke complexity, and meal service, Southwest made radical choices: point-to-point routes, one aircraft type, no frills, fast turnarounds. These weren't random cuts. They were strategic trade-offs that created an unbeatable cost structure. Competitors couldn't copy Southwest without destroying their own business models. The pattern repeats across industries. Apple's 1997 turnaround wasn't about better execution. It was about Steve Jobs killing dozens of products to focus on a simple 2x2 grid. Intel's dominance came from Andy Grove's decision to exit memory chips and bet everything on microprocessors. These leaders understood that saying no to good opportunities is how you say yes to great ones. Meanwhile, you're spreading resources across 17 initiatives, hoping something will stick. You're optimizing for optionality instead of advantage. Every choice deferred is a choice made. You're choosing to be average. The compound power of strategic coherence. Here's what happens when you finally make real strategic choices. They compound. Each aligned decision reinforces the next, creating a flywheel of advantage that becomes harder for competitors to copy. Strategic fit isn't just about efficiency, it's about creating barriers. When your activities lock together in a coherent system, rivals face an impossible choice: copy your individual moves, which won't work without the full system, or rewire their entire business model, which risks destroying what's already working for them. This is why Amazon's dominance feels inevitable now. Their choices, customer obsession, long-term thinking, operational excellence, weren't random values. They were strategic constraints that shaped every subsequent decision. Prime membership reinforced logistics investments. Logistics scale enabled marketplace growth. Marketplace data improved recommendation engines. Each choice made the next choice clearer and the system harder to replicate. The economic benefits compound too. Pricing power grows as differentiation deepens. Customer acquisition costs drop as you attract right-fit buyers who understand your value. Cash converts faster because you're not wasting resources on misaligned activities. Reinvestment compounds because you're doubling down on what's working instead of spreading bets across what might work. But perhaps most importantly, strategic clarity attracts talent and partners. Top performers want to work for companies that know where they're going. Partners want to align with businesses that have clear, defensible positions. Media and customers start telling your story for you because your strategy is memorable and coherent. The death spiral of strategic drift. Ignore this wake-up call, and here's your future: commoditization, margin squeeze, and the slow death of 1,000 compromises. Without clear strategic choices, you'll compete on price because you can't compete on value. Feature creep will create cost without differentiation. Complex operations will slow delivery while increasing churn. You'll work harder and harder for smaller and smaller returns. Decision-making will become a nightmare. Meetings will multiply as every choice requires debate from first principles. Risk aversion will block bold moves because you have no framework for evaluating what's worth the risk. Better-positioned rivals will seize opportunities while you're still forming committees. Your culture will drift into cynicism. People will work hard but won't see the win. They'll execute tasks without understanding the larger game. Turnover will spike as top performers leave for companies with clearer missions. You'll lose moral authority as a leader because you can't articulate why the work matters. This isn't theoretical. It's happening to businesses every day. Companies that were once market leaders but lost their way in the complexity of their own success. Your strategic awakening starts now. This book will teach you to build a one-page strategy that cuts through the noise. You'll learn to craft coherent choices that create real advantage. You'll discover how to embrace trade-offs that make your business harder to copy. Most importantly, you'll develop the courage to say no to good opportunities so you can say yes to great ones. By the time you finish, you'll have a one-sentence strategy anyone can repeat. You'll have 3 to 5 coherent actions with clear owners and deadlines. You'll have non-negotiable trade-offs that protect your edge. And you'll have a monitoring system that forces truth instead of wishful thinking. The path forward requires 3 fundamental shifts. First, diagnose reality without spin. Identify the few root causes driving your situation, not the 30 symptoms everyone wants to discuss. Second, decide where to play and how to win. Narrow your focus to customers and capabilities that create asymmetric advantage. Third, translate these choices into a one-page kernel that guides every decision, budget allocation, and resource deployment. This isn't about working harder. It's about working with coherence. It's about choosing your game instead of letting the game choose you. Winners choose, losers hedge. The difference between strategic winners and losers isn't intelligence or resources, it's attitude. Winners make hard choices and live with the consequences. Losers hedge their bets and wonder why nothing works. Winners say no more than yes because they understand that focus multiplies force. Losers chase every opportunity because they're afraid of missing out. Winners seek discomfort because they know differentiation requires doing things others won't. Losers seek comfort and drift into sameness. Most importantly, winners measure learning while losers measure activity. They track leading indicators that predict future success, not vanity metrics that make them feel good about past effort. They conduct honest debriefs instead of celebration meetings. They follow evidence instead of ego. The choice is yours. You can keep perfecting your planning theater while competitors eat your market share. Or you can wake up, make real choices, and start building the strategic advantage your business deserves. The next chapter, Coherent Choices, will show you exactly how to lock in the core decisions that create lasting advantage. But first, you need to accept a fundamental truth. Your plan is not your strategy. Your strategy is the few bold choices you're brave enough to make and disciplined enough to defend. The wake-up call is over. Now the real work begins. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to Grow to the Top and activate notifications to receive more self-improvement tips that will supercharge your growth. And make sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. It really helps the channel grow. Thank you for your support. Chapter 2, Coherent Choices. Elon Musk could have built the cheapest electric car first. Every business school case study would have told him to start at the bottom of the market and work his way up. Instead, he did something that seemed insane. He started with a $100,000 sports car that only rich early adopters could afford. The Tesla Roadster wasn't just a car, it was a coherent choice. Musk understood something his critics didn't. Strategy isn't about doing everything well. It's about making a few mutually reinforcing decisions that create an advantage no one else can easily copy. But here's what most people miss about Tesla's early strategy. The Roadster wasn't really about cars at all. It was about proving a point, building a brand, and funding the next phase. Every choice, premium positioning, direct sales, cutting-edge technology, reinforced every other choice. This is what coherent choices look like in the real world. Most businesses make the opposite mistake. They try to be everything to everyone, serve every market segment, and avoid any decision that might limit their options. They mistake this hedging for smart strategy. In reality, they're choosing to be average. The commodity death trap. When you refuse to make hard choices about where to play and how to win, the market makes those choices for you. And the market's choice is always the same. You become a commodity. Without clear strategic choices, you default to competing on price because you can't compete on value. Your differentiation blurs because you're trying to differentiate on everything, which means you differentiate on nothing. Customers start seeing you as interchangeable with every other option in your category. The workload explodes while returns stagnate. Your team burns out chasing everything because everything feels important when nothing is clearly more important than anything else. You add features, services, and capabilities in a desperate attempt to keep up with competitors, but each addition dilutes your focus and increases your costs. This is the commodity death trap, and it's where most businesses end up, not because they're bad at execution, but because they're afraid of choice. They're terrified of saying no to any opportunity, any customer segment, any potential revenue stream. So they say yes to everything and excel at nothing. The irony is brutal. In trying to keep all options open, you close off the option that matters most, the option to win. The hidden power of strategic constraints. Here's what changes everything. Coherent choices create leverage. When you finally decide where to play and how to win, resources concentrate instead of scatter. Learning compounds instead of fragments. Your messaging sharpens because you know exactly who you're talking to and what problem you're solving for them. Most importantly, buyers start to self-select. The right customers find you faster because your positioning is clear. The wrong customers filter themselves out because they can see you're not trying to be everything to everyone. This isn't a bug, it's a feature. You want the wrong customers to go somewhere else. Tesla's early choices illustrate this perfectly. By starting with premium electric sports cars, they attracted customers who cared more about innovation and status than price. These customers were willing to pay premium prices and tolerate early-stage product issues because they understood they were buying into a vision, not just a vehicle. But the real genius was how each choice reinforced the others. Premium pricing funded advanced battery technology. Advanced battery technology created performance advantages. Performance advantages attracted media attention. Media attention built brand value. Brand value justified premium pricing. The flywheel was born. Your competitors struggle to copy this kind of coherent fit because they can't just copy one piece. They'd need to copy the entire system. And copying an entire system means abandoning their current system, which is usually too risky for established players to attempt. The speed advantage of clarity. When you know where you're playing and how you're winning, decisions get faster, much faster. You don't need to debate every choice from first principles because you have a clear framework for evaluation. Does this opportunity strengthen our chosen edge? Does this initiative serve our target customer? Does this partnership reinforce our positioning? If the answer is no, the decision is easy. If the answer is yes, you can move quickly because you're not second-guessing your fundamental direction. This speed advantage compounds over time. While competitors are still forming committees to evaluate opportunities, you're already executing. While they're debating whether to enter new markets, you're deepening your moat in your chosen market. While they're trying to be good at everything, you're becoming great at the few things that matter most. The momentum builds trust with customers, partners, and employees. People want to work with businesses that know where they're going. They want to invest in companies that have clear, defensible strategies. They want to partner with organizations that make decisions quickly and stick to them. Decoding the where and how. Every coherent strategy answers two fundamental questions: where will we play, and how will we win? These aren't abstract philosophical questions. They're practical decisions that shape every other choice you make. Where to play means getting specific about customer segments, geographic markets, distribution channels, and the problems you'll solve. It means choosing not just who you'll serve, but who you won't serve. Not just what problems you'll solve, but what problems you'll ignore. IKEA provides a masterclass in this kind of clarity. They chose to serve young, price-conscious customers who were willing to assemble furniture themselves in exchange for dramatically lower prices. They chose warehouse-style stores in suburban locations instead of showrooms in city centers. They chose limited styles and standardized designs instead of custom options. Each choice eliminated alternatives. By choosing self-assembly, they eliminated customers who wanted white-glove delivery. By choosing warehouse stores, they eliminated prime real estate costs. By choosing limited styles, They eliminated the complexity and cost of endless customization. How to win means picking your primary edge, the one thing you'll be better at than anyone else in your chosen market. Cost leadership, speed, customer experience, or network effects. You can't be the best at all four, so you must choose one as your primary advantage and align everything else to support it. The key insight is that your secondary advantages must support, never dilute, your primary edge. If you choose speed as your primary advantage, your cost structure and customer experience must be designed to enable speed, not compete with it for resources and attention. The myths that kill strategic clarity. 3 dangerous myths prevent most leaders from making coherent choices. The first myth is that you can do everything well. This leads to mediocrity everywhere because excellence requires focus, and focus requires trade-offs. When you try to optimize for everything, you optimize for nothing. The second myth is that you should delay choices to keep options open. This feels prudent, but indecision is a hidden, compounding cost. While you're preserving optionality, competitors are building advantages. While you're avoiding commitment, customers are choosing alternatives. While you're keeping options open, your brand becomes fuzzy and forgettable. The third myth is that strategy equals planning. Leaders confuse 100 slide decks with strategic thinking. They mistake complexity for sophistication. But decks don't decide, leaders do. Complexity often masks cowardice, while simplicity scales. The truth is simpler and scarier. Strategy is about making hard choices and living with the consequences. It's about betting on a specific path and committing the resources to make that path successful. The 30-minute strategy session. Here's how to cut through the complexity and make your core choices in one focused session. Set a timer for 30 minutes and answer 3 questions with brutal honesty. First, where will you play? Pick one primary customer segment, one primary channel, and one primary problem you'll solve better than anyone else. Write it in one sentence. If you can't fit it in one sentence, you haven't made real choices yet. Second, how will you win? Choose your primary edge from the 4 fundamental options: lowest cost, fastest speed, best experience, or strongest network effects. Pick one. Your secondary advantages must support this primary choice. Never compete with it. Third, what will you stop doing? List 3 initiatives, features, or market segments you'll abandon to strengthen your chosen position. This is the hardest part because it requires admitting that some of your current activities are diluting your advantage. Now stress test your choices with 3 brutal questions. Would a competitor hate to follow you into this position? What's the exact trade-off you're accepting? Which capabilities must you double down on to make this strategy work? If your answers feel comfortable, you haven't gone far enough. Real strategic choices create discomfort because they force you to bet on a specific future instead of hedging across multiple possibilities. Making strategy stick. Once you've made your choices, compress them into one sentence that anyone can remember and repeat. The formula is simple. For specific customer segment, we win by primary edge via key actions. Tesla's early strategy could be summarized as, for affluent early adopters, we win by delivering the best electric vehicle experience via premium design, direct sales, and proprietary charging infrastructure. IKEA's strategy. For young, price-conscious customers, we win by offering the lowest prices via self-assembly, warehouse stores, and standardized designs. Your one-sentence strategy becomes the filter for every subsequent decision. If an initiative doesn't strengthen your primary edge or serve your chosen customer segment, it doesn't make the cut. If a partnership doesn't reinforce your positioning, it's a distraction. If a feature doesn't support your how-to win, it's bloat. This isn't about being rigid, it's about being coherent. You can adapt your tactics while maintaining your strategic direction. You can evolve your offerings while preserving your core positioning. You can expand your market while deepening your advantage. The goal is to create a self-reinforcing system where each choice makes the next choice clearer and your overall position stronger. When you achieve this kind of coherence, competitors don't just struggle to copy your individual moves, They struggle to understand how all your moves fit together. But coherent choices are only the beginning. Once you know where to play and how to win, you face an even harder challenge: accepting the trade-offs that make your strategy real. And that's where most strategies die, not in the choosing, but in the keeping of what you've chosen. Chapter 3: Trade-offs. Southwest Airlines could have offered first-class cabins. They could have served gourmet meals. They could have flown to major hub airports and provided assigned seating with premium options. Every customer survey and focus group probably told them to add these features. Instead, Herb Kelleher did something that seemed like business suicide. He said no to everything that would make Southwest look like a real airline. No hubs, no meals, no first class, no assigned seats, just one type of aircraft, point-to-point routes, and the fastest turnarounds in the industry. His competitors thought he was crazy. How could you run an airline without the basic features customers expected? But Kelleher understood something they didn't. The power wasn't in what Southwest chose to do. It was in what they chose not to do. Those weren't limitations, they were weapons. Every no made Southwest faster, cheaper, and more reliable. Every constraint created an advantage their competitors couldn't match without destroying their own business models. This is the hidden truth about strategy that most leaders never grasp. Your edge doesn't come from what you add, it comes from what you subtract. The seductive trap of addition. Most businesses die by addition, not subtraction. They start with a clear focus, then gradually add features, services, and capabilities in response to customer requests, competitive pressure, and internal enthusiasm. Each addition seems logical in isolation. Each expansion feels like growth. But addition is a trap. Every new feature creates complexity. Every additional service requires new processes. Every expanded capability demands new skills and resources. What starts as a focused, coherent strategy slowly morphs into an unfocused, incoherent mess. The math is brutal. If you try to be good at 10 things, you'll be mediocre at all of them. If you try to serve every customer segment, you'll delight none of them. If you try to compete on every dimension, you'll win on none of them. Your customers get confused because they can't figure out what you stand for. Your employees get exhausted because they're pulled in 17 different directions. Your costs explode because you're optimizing for everything, which means you're optimizing for nothing. Meanwhile, your focused competitors are getting better and better at the few things they've chosen to excel at. They're building deeper moats while you're building broader puddles. They're creating sustainable advantages while you're creating sustainable mediocrity. The irony is devastating. In trying to serve everyone, you end up serving no one particularly well. The identity crisis of the uncommitted. When you refuse to make trade-offs, you don't just lose efficiency, you lose identity. People can't figure out what you are, which means they can't figure out when to choose you over the alternatives. Think about the last time you tried to explain your business to someone at a networking event. If you found yourself saying, "We do a little bit of everything," or "We serve all kinds of customers," you've already lost. Memorable businesses have clear identities. They stand for something specific, which means they don't stand for everything else. Trade-offs create identity because they force you to take a position. When Southwest chose fast turnarounds over premium amenities, they weren't just making an operational decision. They were declaring their identity as the airline for people who valued time and money over luxury and status. This identity becomes a decision filter that makes everything else easier. Should we add assigned seating? No, because it would slow turnarounds. Should we serve meals? No, because it would complicate operations and increase costs. Should we fly to congested hub airports? No, because it would reduce reliability and speed. Every decision becomes simpler because you have a clear framework for evaluation. Does this strengthen our chosen identity or dilute it? Does this reinforce our edge or compromise it? Does this make us more of what we've chosen to be or less? Your talent aligns with this clarity. The right people are attracted to businesses with clear missions and defined constraints. They want to work somewhere that knows what it's trying to achieve and what it's willing to sacrifice to achieve it. The multiplication effect of systematic fit. Here's where trade-offs become truly powerful. They create systematic fit. When every activity in your business reinforces every other activity, the whole becomes dramatically more than the sum of its parts. Southwest's trade-offs didn't just reduce costs, they created a self-reinforcing system. Point-to-point routes enabled faster turnarounds. Faster turnarounds enabled higher aircraft utilization. Higher utilization enabled lower costs per seat. Lower costs enabled lower prices. Lower prices enabled higher load factors. Higher load factors enabled more frequent flights. More frequent flights made point-to-point routes more attractive to customers. Each element strengthened every other element. Competitors couldn't copy just one piece of the system because no single piece created the advantage. They would have had to copy the entire system, which meant abandoning their own systems, a risk most established players couldn't afford to take. This is the multiplication effect of systematic fit. Your activities don't just add to each other, they multiply each other. The result is an advantage that's exponentially harder to replicate than any individual capability. But systematic fit only emerges when you're willing to make hard trade-offs. When you try to optimize for everything, your activities start working against each other instead of with each other. Speed conflicts with customization, quality conflicts with cost, variety conflicts with reliability. The magic happens when you pick one side of these conflicts and align everything to support that choice. The myths that prevent strategic sacrifice. Two dangerous myths prevent most leaders from making the trade-offs that create real advantage. The first myth is that you can add everything later. Leaders convince themselves that constraints are temporary. Once they achieve scale or success, they'll be able to offer everything their customers want. This is backwards thinking. Complexity compounds faster than capability. Each addition creates exponential interactions with everything else in your system. Quality collapses under the weight of too many priorities. Customers get confused by too many options. Costs explode as you try to optimize for conflicting objectives. The businesses that try to add everything later usually end up adding nothing particularly well. They become the Swiss Army knife of their industry, capable of many things but excellent at none. The second myth is that trade-offs are temporary constraints you'll eventually overcome. Leaders see their limitations as problems to solve rather than advantages to protect. They work to eliminate the very constraints that create their edge. But removing trade-offs removes your advantage. When Southwest started adding more routes, assigned seating options, and premium services, they didn't become a better airline, they became a more ordinary one. When they tried to compete with traditional carriers on traditional terms, they lost what made them special in the first place. Your competitors cheer when you blur your focus because it makes you easier to compete against. When you try to be everything to everyone, you become nothing special to anyone. The art of strategic subtraction. The path to powerful trade-offs starts with a simple but brutal exercise, the don't-do list. Take 30 minutes and write down 10 initiatives, features, or services that seem tempting but don't directly strengthen your primary edge. Then cross out 7 of them. For the remaining 3, write down exactly how they conflict with your chosen strategy. Does this feature slow down your core process? Does this service require capabilities that dilute your focus? Does this initiative serve customers who aren't in your target segment? Keep only the initiatives that actually strengthen your systematic fit. Kill everything else, no matter how logical it seems in isolation. Next, create a fit map. Put your primary edge in the center of a page and draw branches to the 5 to 7 activities that most directly reinforce it. This becomes your filter for all future decisions. If a proposal doesn't thicken one of these branches, it doesn't make the cut. The hardest part is making your trade-offs public. Write down what you won't do and share it with your team, your customers, and your partners. Bake these constraints into your onboarding process. Review them quarterly to prevent drift. This transparency feels risky because it makes your limitations visible, but it's actually a source of strength. When customers know what you won't do, they trust you more on what you will do. When employees understand your constraints, they can make better decisions without constant escalation. The proud no and the confident constraint. When you have to say no to customer requests or market opportunities, don't just say no, explain why. Use what I call the proud no, a response that demonstrates how your constraints create value. We don't offer custom integrations because our standardized platform is what allows us to deliver updates every 2 weeks and maintain 99.9% uptime. We don't serve enterprise customers because our focus on small businesses is what enables our simple pricing and instant setup. We don't provide phone support because our self-service approach is what keeps our costs low and our prices affordable. Each proud no reinforces your positioning and helps customers understand the value of your trade-offs. It turns limitations into differentiators and constraints into competitive advantages. Add a "what's not changing" note to calm customers who might worry that your focus means instability. Reassure them that your core value proposition will remain consistent even as you evolve your tactics. Most importantly, reward your team for cuts that improve fit. Celebrate the features you don't build, the markets you don't enter, and the customers you don't chase. Make subtraction as valued as addition. The compound returns of constraint. When you finally commit to meaningful trade-offs, the results compound quickly. Process complexity drops by 15 to 25% as you eliminate conflicting priorities. Cycle times improve as you stop context switching between different objectives. Customer satisfaction increases as your experience becomes more consistent and predictable. Your costs per unit drop significantly because you're no longer spreading resources across incompatible goals. Your reliability improves because you're optimizing for fewer variables. Your hiring gets easier because your identity attracts people who want to work on focused, coherent challenges. Most importantly, your competitors struggle to match your performance because they can't replicate your systematic fit without making the same trade-offs you've made. And most of them aren't willing to make those trade-offs because they're still trapped in the addition mindset. But even the most powerful trade-offs are worthless if you can't translate them into action. You need a framework that turns your strategic choices into daily decisions, your constraints into operational reality, and your focus into measurable results. That framework has a name, and it's simpler than you think. But first, you need to understand why most strategic frameworks fail, and what makes this one different. Chapter 4, Kernel. Andy Grove faced a moment that would define Intel's future. It was 1985, and the company was hemorrhaging money in the memory chip business, the very business that had built Intel's reputation. Japanese competitors were crushing them on price and quality. The board was getting restless. Employees were confused about the company's direction. Grove could have done what most CEOs do in crisis: form committees, hire consultants, and create a 200-slide turnaround plan. Instead, he did something that seemed almost recklessly simple. He walked into a meeting and said, "If we got kicked out and the board brought in a new CEO, what do you think he would do?" The answer was obvious: exit memory and bet everything on microprocessors. That moment of clarity, brutal diagnosis, clear policy, decisive action, saved Intel and created one of the most valuable companies in history. But here's what most people miss about Grove's decision. It wasn't just about choosing the right market. It was about having a framework that could cut through complexity and convert insight into action. Grove had discovered what military strategists have known for centuries. Winning requires more than good intentions and smart people. It requires a kernel, a core logic that transforms confusion into clarity and clarity into results. The execution graveyard. Most strategies die in the execution graveyard, not because they're bad strategies, but because they're not really strategies at all. They're collections of good ideas masquerading as coherent plans. They're vision statements without direction, goals without guidance, and initiatives without integration. Walk into any leadership team meeting and you'll see the symptoms. Teams pursue disconnected initiatives that don't reinforce each other. Priorities change weekly based on the latest crisis or opportunity. Confidence erodes because no one can see how the pieces fit together or whether they're making real progress toward anything that matters. The problem isn't lack of effort or intelligence. The problem is lack of structure. Without a clear kernel, execution splinters into 1,000 fragments. People work hard on things that don't matter. Resources get spread across initiatives that don't connect. Energy dissipates instead of compounds. This is why most businesses feel busy but not productive, active but not effective. They're optimizing individual pieces without understanding how those pieces should work together to create something larger than the sum of their parts. A kernel changes everything because it converts vision into action. Everyone knows the aim and the few moves that will get you there. Meetings decide faster because you have clear criteria for evaluation. Budgets have a logic because every dollar connects to a specific outcome you're trying to achieve. Most importantly, the kernel travels. It's easy to teach and hard to misinterpret. It scales across teams and partners without losing its meaning. It survives leadership changes because it's not dependent on any individual's charisma or memory. The three-part engine of strategic clarity. The kernel has 3 parts, and each part serves a specific function in converting complexity into action. Think of it as a 3-stage engine. Diagnosis powers understanding, guiding policy powers decision-making, and coherent actions power execution. The diagnosis is your unflinching assessment of reality. Not the reality you wish existed, not the reality your stakeholders want to hear about, but the reality that's actually driving your situation. This isn't about listing every problem or opportunity you can think of. It's about identifying the few causal forces that matter most. Most diagnoses fail because they're too soft, too broad, or too diplomatic. They describe symptoms instead of causes. They avoid uncomfortable truths. They try to make everyone feel good instead of making everyone understand what's really happening. A powerful diagnosis cuts through the noise and names the 3 truths that are shaping your competitive position. Customer behavior is shifting faster than your product development cycle. Your cost structure is fundamentally misaligned with market pricing. Your brand positioning is confusing customers and diluting your value proposition. Each truth should be falsifiable. You should be able to name specific evidence that would prove you wrong. This isn't about being pessimistic, it's about being precise. Vague diagnoses lead to vague strategies. Sharp diagnoses lead to sharp strategies. The guiding policy is your 1-sentence rule of play. It's not a goal or a vision, it's a constraint that channels your choices. It narrows the game you're playing and names the trade-off you're accepting. It spotlights the capability you'll build and the edge you'll create. We will win by being the fastest to market with good enough solutions, accepting higher technical debt in exchange for speed. We will dominate the premium segment through superior customer experience, accepting higher costs in exchange for loyalty and pricing power. We will achieve cost leadership through operational excellence, accepting limited customization in exchange for efficiency and scale. Notice what each policy does. It makes a choice, accepts a trade-off, and implies a set of capabilities you'll need to develop. It's not inspirational, it's instructional. It tells you what to do when faced with competing priorities or conflicting opportunities. The coherent actions are the 3 to 5 moves that reinforce each other and advance your guiding policy. These aren't random tasks or good ideas. They're carefully chosen initiatives that stack and multiply. Each action should make the others more effective. Together, they should create momentum that's hard for competitors to match or counter. The mission statement mirage. Before we go deeper into building your kernel, we need to destroy a dangerous myth that derails most strategic thinking: the belief that mission statements are strategies. Mission statements describe values and aspirations. Strategies describe choices and trade-offs. Mission statements inspire, strategies instruct. Mission statements tell you why you exist. Strategies tell you how you'll win. To organize the world's information and make it universally accessible is Google's mission. It's inspiring, but it's not a strategy. Google's strategy in search was to use algorithmic relevance instead of human curation, accepting the risk of less editorial control in exchange for infinite scale and speed. The confusion between mission and strategy causes massive execution problems. Teams try to operationalize inspiration instead of instruction. They pursue activities that feel aligned with their values but don't advance their competitive position. They measure sentiment instead of progress. Values don't equal choices. Inspiration without direction causes drift. Customers buy outcomes, not words. Your kernel must be more concrete, more specific, and more actionable than any mission statement could ever be. The second myth is that more initiatives equal more progress. This is the spray and pray approach to strategy. Launch a dozen initiatives and hope something works. But sprawl hides the signal. When everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. When you're trying to move in 10 directions at once, you're not really moving at all. Diminishing returns kick in fast when you spread resources across too many bets. Average effort across many initiatives loses to concentrated effort on a few. The businesses that win big usually do so by doing a few things exceptionally well, not by doing many things adequately. The 45-minute kernel sprint. Building your kernel doesn't require months of analysis or expensive consultants. It requires 45 minutes of honest thinking and brutal prioritization. Set a timer and work through the 3 stages without stopping to perfect or polish. Start with diagnosis. Give yourself 15 minutes to list 10 observations about your competitive situation, then collapse them into 3 causal truths. What are the fundamental forces shaping your market? What's really driving customer behavior? What's the root cause of your biggest challenges or opportunities? Don't overthink this. Your first instincts are usually closer to the truth than your carefully crafted analyses. Look for patterns that connect seemingly unrelated problems. Identify forces that are accelerating or intensifying. Name the elephants in the room that everyone sees but no one discusses. Move to guiding policy. Give yourself 10 minutes to write one sentence that narrows the game and names a trade-off. How will you create advantage? What will you accept in exchange for that advantage? What capability will you build to make this policy work? Test your policy by imagining a real decision you'll face in the next month. Does your policy give you clear guidance on what to choose? If it could justify any decision, it's too vague. If it makes you uncomfortable because it rules out attractive options, you're on the right track. Finish with coherent actions. Give yourself 20 minutes to pick 3 to 5 moves that reinforce each other and advance your policy. Assign owners to each action. Set start dates and kill criteria. Identify the leading indicators you'll watch to know if you're making progress. Resist the urge to include everything that seems important. Resist the temptation to hedge by keeping your options open. Resist the pressure to make everyone happy by including their pet projects. The kernel's power comes from what it excludes, not what it includes. Making the kernel stick. Once you've built your kernel, you need to make it stick. This means more than just writing it down. It means embedding it into how your organization thinks and operates. Start by teaching the kernel in under 3 minutes. If you can't explain your diagnosis, policy, and actions in 3 minutes, they're too complex. Practice until you can deliver the kernel without notes, without jargon, and without losing your audience's attention. Put the kernel on your one-page strategy document and put that document on walls, in presentations, and at the top of every planning agenda. Open every meeting by restating the kernel. Close every meeting by connecting decisions back to the kernel. Use verbs instead of adjectives when describing your actions. Reduce onboarding time by 40% is better than improve customer experience. Launch 3 new integrations per quarter is better than expand platform capabilities. Specific, measurable language prevents drift and enables accountability. Cap your coherent actions at 5. More than 5 actions is mush. too many priorities competing for attention and resources. If you have more than 5 actions, either combine related ones or kill the weakest ones. The discipline of limitation forces clarity and focus. Tie every budget line to one coherent action. If you can't connect an expense to one of your 3 to 5 actions, question whether you should be spending money on it. This creates a direct link between your strategic choices and your resource allocation. When kernels go wrong, even well-intentioned kernels can fail, usually for predictable reasons. The most common failure is a diagnosis that's too soft. It describes symptoms instead of causes, avoids uncomfortable truths, or tries to make everyone feel good instead of making everyone understand reality. Fix this by adding real customer data and competitive intelligence. Invite someone to red team your assumptions and challenge your conclusions. Rewrite your diagnosis in clearer, sharper language that names specific forces and trends. The second common failure is an action list that's too long. Leaders try to include everything that seems important, which dilutes focus and creates execution chaos. Fix this by merging duplicates, cutting nice-to-haves, and keeping only actions that reinforce each other. Enforce a hard cap and stick to it. The third failure is a guiding policy that's too vague. It sounds strategic, but doesn't actually guide decisions. Fix this by stating what you will not do, linking your policy to a specific capability you'll build, and pressure testing it with real decisions you're facing. Your kernel is the foundation of everything that follows. Get it right, and execution becomes clearer, decisions become faster, and results become more predictable. Get it wrong, and you'll keep spinning your wheels no matter how hard you work. But even the most powerful kernel is useless if it lives in a drawer or gets buried in a planning document. The next step is to compress your entire strategy into something so simple and memorable that everyone in your organization can carry it in their head and use it every day. Chapter 5, 1 page. Steve Jobs walked into the Apple boardroom in 1997 carrying a single sheet of paper. The company was 90 days from bankruptcy, bleeding cash across dozens of confusing products that nobody wanted. The board expected a comprehensive turnaround plan, market analysis, financial projections, detailed timelines. Instead, Jobs drew a simple 2x2 grid on a whiteboard, desktop and portable across the top, consumer and professional down the side, 4 boxes, 4 products, everything else would be killed. "This is our strategy," he said, pointing to the grid. "We're going to make 4 great products instead of 40 mediocre ones." The room went silent. Board members looked around, waiting for the real presentation to begin. Where were the slides? Where was the analysis? Where was the plan? But Jobs understood something they didn't. Complexity kills adoption. If your strategy can't fit on one page, it can't fit in people's heads. And if it can't fit in people's heads, it can't guide their daily decisions. That one-page grid saved Apple and launched the most valuable company in history, not because it was comprehensive, but because it was comprehensible. The death by 1,000 slides. Most strategies die in PowerPoint. They get buried under layers of analysis, qualification, and elaboration until the core insight disappears completely. What starts as a clear choice becomes a 47-slide deck that nobody reads and everybody interprets differently. The problem isn't that people are lazy or stupid. The problem is that human brains have limited working memory. We can hold about 7 pieces of information in our heads at once. When strategies exceed this cognitive limit, people forget, reinterpret, or cherry-pick the parts they remember. This is why execution splinters into pet projects. Without a simple, memorable framework, teams pursue whatever seems important to them in the moment. Marketing launches campaigns that don't align with product development. Sales promises features that engineering never prioritized. Operations optimizes for metrics that don't support the overall strategy. Decisions slow to a crawl because every choice requires relitigating the fundamental strategy. Meetings become debates about direction instead of discussions about execution. Drift accelerates as people fill the clarity vacuum with their own interpretations and preferences. Meanwhile, your competitors with simpler strategies are moving faster. They're making decisions in hours that take you weeks. They're executing with confidence while you're second-guessing every move. They're building momentum while you're building confusion. The cruel irony is that the more complex your strategy document, the less strategic your organization becomes. The cognitive science of strategic clarity. Here's what neuroscience tells us about how people actually process and use information. We execute what we can remember, and we remember what's simple. A single page leverages these cognitive realities instead of fighting them. When information fits on one page, it creates what psychologists call cognitive ease, the mental state where processing feels effortless and confidence is high. People are more likely to use tools that feel easy to understand and apply. They're more likely to trust frameworks that don't overwhelm their working memory. The one-pager also counters the planning fallacy, our tendency to overestimate our capacity and underestimate friction. Complex strategies feel comprehensive, but they're actually fragile. They require perfect coordination, flawless communication, and unlimited attention. Simple strategies are robust because they work even when execution is imperfect. Most importantly, the page operationalizes your kernel as a visible contract. If a request doesn't advance the guiding policy and coherent actions, it waits or dies. The page becomes a decision filter that speeds choices and cuts waste. This isn't about dumbing down your strategy, it's about making it smart enough to survive contact with reality. Simplicity isn't aesthetic, it's execution technology. The memory moat advantage. When your strategy is memorable, it becomes repeatable. When it's repeatable, it scales. When it scales, it compounds. This creates what I call the memory moat, a competitive advantage that comes from having a strategy people can actually remember and use. Think about the most successful strategies you know. Be number 1 or number 2 in every market, or fix it or exit it, Jack Welch's GE strategy. Organize the world's information and make it universally accessible, Google's mission. Think different, Apple's brand positioning. These aren't complex frameworks. They're simple principles that anyone can understand, remember, and apply. They travel well across teams, functions, and geographies. They survive leadership changes because they're not dependent on any individual's interpretation or memory. Your competitors can copy your products, your processes, and your people. But they can't copy a strategy that lives in the collective memory of your organization. When everyone from the CEO to the newest intern can recite your strategy and use it to make decisions, you've created something that's genuinely hard to replicate. The shared language reduces debate time because everyone starts from the same foundation. Faster no's, free resources for winning moves because the criteria for rejection are clear and consistent. Accountability becomes concrete and visible because everyone knows what success looks like and who's responsible for delivering it. The 7-block architecture. Converting your kernel into a practical one-pager requires a specific architecture, 7 blocks that capture everything essential while eliminating everything extraneous. The first block is your diagnosis. 3 causal truths in plain English. Not symptoms, not wishes, not diplomatic language that makes everyone comfortable. The fundamental forces that are shaping your competitive situation, written so clearly that a 9th grader could understand them. The second block defines where you'll play, your chosen segment, channel, and geography. This isn't about describing your total addressable market. It's about naming the specific game you've chosen to win with enough precision that people know what's in bounds and what's out of bounds. The third block states how you'll win, your single primary edge, cost leadership, speed advantage, superior experience, or network effects. Pick one. Your secondary advantages support this primary choice. They don't compete with it for resources and attention. The fourth block lists your trade-offs and don't-dos. 5 explicit no's that protect your positioning. These aren't temporary constraints you'll eventually overcome. They're permanent choices that create your advantage by forcing activity system fit. The fifth block contains your coherent actions, 3 to 5 moves that reinforce each other and advance your guiding policy. Each action has a verb, an owner, and start-stop dates. No adjectives, no vague aspirations, no activities that can't be measured. The sixth block tracks your leading indicators, 3 to 5 metrics that predict future success. Win rate, cycle time, net promoter score, customer acquisition cost, lifetime value. Numbers that tell you whether your strategy is working before the financial results show up. The seventh block assigns ownership and deadlines, who decides what, by when, with what budget. This eliminates the ambiguity that kills execution. Everyone knows who's accountable for each piece of the strategy and when they need to deliver results. Making the page live and breathe. Creating the one-pager is the easy part. Making it live and breathe in your organization is the hard part. The page must become a working document, not a wall decoration. Start by printing it, pinning it up, and opening every meeting by reviewing it. Make it impossible to ignore. Require that all proposals cite which box they strengthen. If someone can't connect their idea to one of the 7 blocks, the idea doesn't get considered. The page must be living, not ornamental. Review it weekly to track progress on the Coherent Actions. Update it monthly to reflect new learning and changing conditions. But here's the crucial discipline. Remove lines more often than you add them. The page's power comes from what it excludes, not what it includes. Set a monthly red line session where you delete at least one item to keep the page sharp. Fight the natural tendency to add complexity over time. Resist the pressure to include everyone's pet projects. Defend the simplicity that makes the page useful. Use 9th grade reading level language. Choose verbs over adjectives. Limit each box to 1 sentence maximum. No wraparounds, no fine print, no exceptions. Add icons or emblems to boost recall and make the page more visually memorable. Most importantly, tie approvals to the boxes. If a proposal doesn't strengthen one of your coherent actions or advance your guiding policy, reject it, regardless of how good it sounds in isolation. The page becomes your shield against the 1,000 good ideas that would dilute your focus. When pages become wallpaper, even well-designed one-pagers can fail if they become decorative instead of functional. The most common failure is the page becoming wallpaper, something people see but don't use. This happens when leaders create the page but don't enforce its use in decision-making. Fix this by making the page a prerequisite for all approvals. No budget without a box. No project without a policy connection. No initiative without an action alignment. Reject proposals that can't cite their strategic fit, regardless of their individual merit. The second failure is complexity creep, the gradual return of the very complexity the page was designed to eliminate. This happens when leaders add exceptions, qualifications, and special cases over time. The page grows from 1 page to 2, then 3, then back to the 47-slide deck you started with. Fight this with the monthly redline discipline. Remove at least 1 item every month. Combine related actions. Eliminate redundant language. Merge overlapping metrics. The goal is to make the page simpler over time, not more complex. The third failure is ambiguous ownership. Actions without clear deciders, metrics without clear owners, deadlines without clear accountability. This happens when leaders try to avoid conflict by keeping responsibilities vague. Fix this by naming a specific person for each action and metric. Publish their contact information. Make accountability visible and unavoidable. If you can't name who's responsible for something, it probably doesn't belong on the page. The compound returns of compression. When you finally compress your strategy to 1 page and make it stick, the results compound quickly. Initiative count drops by 25 to 40% as you eliminate work that doesn't strengthen your position. Throughput increases because resources concentrate on fewer, more important priorities. Decision cycle time decreases by 30% because you have clear criteria for evaluation. Managers can recite the page from memory, which means they can make aligned decisions without constant escalation. Meetings become shorter and more productive because everyone starts from the same strategic foundation. The financial results follow. Gross margins improve by 3 to 5 percentage points as you eliminate activities that don't create value. Customer lifetime value to acquisition cost ratios improve by 20 to 40% as you focus on the right customers with the right value proposition. Your roadmap clarity attracts better partners and talent because people want to work with organizations that know where they're going. You become the reference point that competitors react to instead of the follower that reacts to others. But a one-page strategy is still just a static document. To create lasting advantage, you need something more dynamic, a rhythm that keeps your strategy alive and responsive as markets shift and opportunities emerge. The next chapter reveals how the most successful strategists stay ahead of change without losing their strategic coherence. It's not about predicting the future. It's about building something more powerful than prediction itself. Chapter 6, Adaptive Tempo. Reed Hastings had a problem that would have paralyzed most CEOs. It was 2007, and Netflix was printing money with their DVD by mail service. Customers loved it, investors loved it, the business model was working perfectly. But Hastings could see the future, and it terrified him. Broadband was getting faster. Streaming technology was improving. The very foundation of Netflix's success was about to become obsolete. He faced an impossible choice: cannibalize his profitable business to bet on an uncertain future, or wait and watch competitors destroy him. Most leaders would have formed committees, hired consultants, and spent months analyzing the perfect timing for transition. Hastings did something different. He started small, learned fast, and adapted quickly. He didn't try to predict the future. He built a system to sense it and respond before his competitors could react. This wasn't just good luck or brilliant foresight. It was adaptive tempo, the ability to maintain strategic coherence while adjusting to changing conditions faster than anyone else in your market. But here's what most people miss about Netflix's transformation. It wasn't one big pivot. It was a series of small, intelligent bets that built on each other over time. Each move bought information. Each experiment reduced uncertainty. Each decision preserved the core strategy while adapting the tactics. This is the secret that separates strategic winners from strategic casualties. They don't just make good plans. They build learning systems that get smarter with every cycle. The static strategy death trap. Most strategies die not because they're wrong, but because they're rigid. They assume a world that doesn't exist, a world where customer behavior stays constant, technology moves predictably, and competitive dynamics remain stable. But markets don't stand still. Customer behavior shifts faster than annual budgets can accommodate. Technology punctures moats that seemed impregnable just months before. Regulations change the rules of entire industries overnight. Competitors emerge from unexpected directions with business models that make yours look obsolete. Late movers in these shifts pay premium prices for catch-up. They're forced to acquire capabilities at inflated valuations, enter markets after the best positions are taken, and compete for talent that's already been recruited by faster-moving rivals. The companies that thrive in uncertainty aren't the ones with the best predictions. They're the ones with the best learning systems. They sense changes earlier, decide faster, and adapt more coherently than their competitors. They turn uncertainty from a threat into an advantage. This isn't about abandoning strategy for chaos. It's about building strategy that's robust enough to maintain direction while being flexible enough to adjust course. It's about creating what military strategists call adaptive tempo, the ability to operate inside your opponent's decision cycle and force them to react to you instead of the other way around. The speed advantage in an uncertain world. Speed beats size when the world is changing fast. Short decision loops outlearn large bureaucracies. Small reversible experiments buy information more efficiently than massive irreversible commitments. Optionality limits downside while preserving upside. This creates a compound advantage. Each cycle of learning makes the next cycle faster and more accurate. Confidence grows with evidence instead of hope. Resources flow toward what's working instead of what was planned. The organization becomes anti-fragile. It gets stronger from stress instead of weaker. Your tempo also creates pressure on competitors. When you're moving faster than they can respond, you force them into reactive mode. They start chasing your moves instead of executing their own strategy. They make mistakes under pressure. They lose narrative control as the market starts seeing you as the pace setter. Talent thrives in this environment because momentum is energizing. People want to work for organizations that are learning, growing, and winning. They want to be part of something that's moving forward, not something that's standing still. But adaptive tempo isn't about moving fast for the sake of speed. It's about moving fast to learn fast. It's about compressing the time between hypothesis and evidence, between decision and feedback, between action and adjustment. The three-loop learning engine. Building adaptive tempo requires a specific rhythm, three nested loops that operate at different timescales and serve different functions. Think of it as a learning engine with three gears: weekly sensing, monthly deciding, and quarterly resetting. The weekly loop focuses on signals, not noise. You review 3 to 5 leading indicators that predict future performance. Customer acquisition trends, not total customers. Pipeline velocity, not pipeline size. Net promoter score changes, not absolute scores. These metrics tell you what's coming, not what already happened. The goal isn't to react to every fluctuation. It's to separate signal from noise and make minor course corrections before small problems become big ones. You're looking for patterns that suggest your assumptions might be wrong, or your tactics might need adjustment. The monthly loop is where you make killer scale decisions. You reallocate 10 to 20% of your capacity based on what you've learned. Experiments that are working get more resources. Experiments that aren't working get killed. New experiments get launched to test emerging hypotheses. This isn't about major strategic pivots. It's about tactical adaptation within your strategic framework. Your guiding policy stays constant, but your coherent actions evolve based on evidence. You're adjusting the how while preserving the what and why. The quarterly loop is where you revisit your fundamental diagnosis. Are the forces you identified still the most important ones shaping your market? Are your assumptions about customer behavior still valid? Are your beliefs about competitive dynamics still accurate? This is where you might adjust your coherent actions or even your guiding policy if the evidence is overwhelming. But the bar for change is high because strategic coherence has value. You're looking for genuine inflection points, not temporary fluctuations. The real options approach to strategic uncertainty. Traditional planning assumes you can predict the future well enough to make big, irreversible commitments. Adaptive tempo assumes you can't, so it uses real options, small, reversible bets that buy information and preserve flexibility. The first stage is the reversible microbet. You invest the minimum amount necessary to test a hypothesis. This might be a 2-week experiment, a limited pilot program, or a small market test. The investment is time-boxed, and the downside is capped. If the signals are positive and cross predefined thresholds, you move to stage 2, a medium commitment with more resources and a longer timeline. You're still preserving optionality, but you're increasing your bet size based on evidence. If the signals continue to be positive, you move to stage 3, full funding and scaling. By this point, you've reduced uncertainty through learning, so the risk of a large commitment is much lower than it would have been at the beginning. This approach flips the traditional planning model. Instead of making big bets based on assumptions, you make small bets to test assumptions. Instead of trying to reduce uncertainty through analysis, you reduce uncertainty through experimentation. Instead of planning your way to confidence, you learn your way to confidence. Netflix's evolution illustrates this perfectly. They didn't bet everything on streaming in 2007. They started with a limited streaming offering alongside their DVD service. They learned what worked and what didn't. They gradually shifted resources as the evidence accumulated. By the time they made the full transition, they had years of data to guide their decisions. The assumption testing discipline. Most strategies fail because they're built on untested assumptions. Adaptive tempo makes these assumptions explicit and designs tests to validate or invalidate them quickly and cheaply. Start by listing the top 5 beliefs that power your edge. These might be assumptions about customer behavior, competitive dynamics, technology trends, or market evolution. Write them as falsifiable statements, claims that could be proven wrong with specific evidence. For each assumption, design one low-cost test that could provide disconfirming evidence. If you believe customers will pay premium prices for faster service, test it with a small cohort before building your entire pricing strategy around it. If you believe competitors won't respond to your moves for 6 months, design early warning systems to detect their responses. Publish the results and decide publicly. This creates accountability and prevents confirmation bias. When evidence contradicts your assumptions, you adjust your strategy. When evidence supports your assumptions, you increase your confidence and commitment. The key is to name uncertainties explicitly. Fear shrinks when it becomes visible and manageable. Teams perform better when they understand what they're testing and why. Stakeholders trust leaders who acknowledge uncertainty instead of pretending it doesn't exist. The rhythm that prevents chaos. Adaptive tempo isn't about constant change, it's about intelligent change. The rhythm prevents both stagnation and chaos by creating structured opportunities for adjustment while maintaining strategic coherence. Cap experiments at 2 per team to avoid thrash. More experiments don't necessarily mean more learning if they're competing for attention and resources. Focus creates better data and clearer insights. Use stop dates to force truth. Every experiment needs a predefined end date when you'll evaluate results and make a decision. This prevents experiments from becoming permanent fixtures that consume resources without delivering insights. Tie all changes to your guiding policy and document why you're making them. This prevents random motion and maintains strategic coherence. People need to understand how tactical adjustments serve the larger strategy. Predefine thresholds for action to avoid analysis paralysis. When specific metrics cross specific levels, you take specific actions. This removes emotion and politics from decision-making and speeds response times. Limit your metrics to avoid signal fog. Too many dashboards create noise instead of insight. Focus on the few indicators that actually predict future performance and ignore the vanity metrics that make you feel good but don't drive decisions. The compound returns of learning speed. When you build genuine adaptive tempo, the results compound quickly. Time to decision drops by 30 to 50% because you have clear criteria and regular rhythms for evaluation. Reallocation occurs monthly without drama because it's built into your operating system. You identify misses early and cap losses before they become catastrophic. You hit opportunities first because you're sensing and responding faster than competitors. You gain narrative control as the market starts seeing you as the pace setter instead of the follower. Most importantly, your return on invested capital rises as you direct resources toward what's actually working instead of what you hoped would work. Your learning speed becomes a sustainable competitive advantage that's hard for rivals to match. But adaptive tempo is only valuable if you're adapting toward something meaningful. Speed without direction is just motion. Learning without focus is just activity. The next chapter reveals how to concentrate your newfound agility on the few bets that can actually move the needle. Because in a world of infinite opportunities and limited resources, the ultimate strategic skill isn't learning faster, it's learning what to ignore. Ruthless focus. Warren Buffett keeps a simple rule pinned above his desk. The difference between successful people and really successful people is that really successful people say no to almost everything. When Berkshire Hathaway's managers bring him investment opportunities, Buffett doesn't evaluate them against each other. He evaluates them against doing nothing. Most ideas, even good ones, get rejected not because they're bad, but because they don't meet his impossibly high bar for concentration. This seems counterintuitive. Shouldn't more opportunities mean more growth? Shouldn't diversification reduce risk? Shouldn't smart people be able to handle multiple priorities simultaneously? Buffett knows something most leaders never learn. The enemy of great isn't bad, it's good. Every decent opportunity you pursue is a great opportunity you can't pursue. Every resource you spread thin is a resource you can't concentrate where it matters most. This isn't about being conservative or risk-averse. It's about understanding a fundamental truth that separates strategic winners from strategic also-rans. Focus is strategy in action. Everything else is just planning. But here's what most people miss about focus. It's not about working harder or longer. It's about working with such concentrated force that your competitors can't match your pace in the lane you've chosen to dominate. The shallow progress epidemic. Most organizations are drowning in shallow progress. They're making incremental advances on 17 different fronts, while their focused competitors are making breakthrough advances on 3. They mistake motion for momentum, activity for achievement, and busyness for business results. The math is brutal. Context switching burns cognitive cycles that can never be recovered. Every time someone shifts from one project to another, they lose time, energy, and mental clarity. What feels like productive multitasking is actually expensive task switching that degrades performance across everything. Competing priorities create a different kind of paralysis. When everything is important, nothing gets the sustained attention required for breakthrough results. Teams start projects they never finish. They build features that never ship. They chase opportunities that never materialize because they never commit enough resources to make them real. Morale drops as nothing meaningful gets completed. People lose confidence in their ability to execute because they're constantly being pulled in different directions. They start to doubt the organization's strategy because they can't see how their daily work connects to any larger purpose. Meanwhile, your focused competitors are experiencing the opposite dynamic. Deep work produces nonlinear gains because sustained attention allows for the kind of thinking and problem-solving that creates genuine breakthroughs. Learning accelerates on the main path because feedback loops are tighter and insights compound faster. Most importantly, competitors can't match your pace in your chosen lane because they're spreading their efforts across multiple lanes. While they're trying to be good at everything, you're becoming great at the few things that matter most. The invisible enemy of excellence. The real enemy isn't obvious distractions or clearly bad ideas. The real enemy is opportunity cost, the invisible price you pay for every good thing you choose to do instead of the great thing you could have done. Opportunity cost is invisible because it doesn't show up on financial statements or project reports. You can't measure what didn't happen. You can't track the breakthrough you didn't achieve because you were busy with incremental improvements. You can't quantify the market position you didn't capture because you were defending positions that didn't matter. This invisibility makes overcommitment feel safe. Adding one more project doesn't seem to hurt anything in the short term. Taking on one more initiative feels like progress. Saying yes to one more opportunity feels like growth. But the costs compound silently. Each additional commitment reduces the quality of attention you can give to everything else. Each new priority dilutes the resources available for your most important work. Each extra initiative increases coordination costs and communication overhead. The fix requires making opportunity cost visible through ranked allocations linked to your guiding policy. You need pre-commitments that are hard to reverse, clear criteria for what gets resources and what doesn't, and the discipline to protect your top priorities from the 1,000 good ideas that would dilute them. The concentration advantage. When you finally commit to ruthless focus, something magical happens. Concentration creates compound advantages that are almost impossible for competitors to match. Focus signals seriousness to everyone who matters. Partners commit more deeply because they can see you're committed. Customers believe your promises because your actions align with your words. Investors trust your strategy because you're actually executing it instead of hedging across multiple options. Talent self-selects into focused organizations because top performers want to work on meaningful problems with adequate resources. They want to see their work make a real impact, not get lost in a sea of competing priorities. They want to be part of something that's moving forward decisively, not something that's moving in circles. Distractions lose their power when you have clear criteria for what deserves attention and what doesn't. New opportunities get evaluated against your existing commitments, not in isolation. Good ideas get captured for later consideration instead of disrupting current execution. The learning advantages compound over time. When you concentrate resources on fewer initiatives, you get better data faster. Feedback loops tighten because you're not spreading attention across too many variables. Insights accumulate because you're staying with problems long enough to understand them deeply. Most importantly, you start to build what economists call increasing returns to scale. Each additional unit of effort produces more than proportional results because you're building on previous investments instead of starting from scratch with each new initiative. The 10-60-30 formula. Implementing ruthless focus requires a specific allocation formula that forces hard choices while preserving some optionality for learning and adaptation. The top 10% of your initiatives, your absolute highest impact, highest confidence bets, get 60% of your resources. These are the moves that directly advance your guiding policy and strengthen your primary edge. They get the best people, the most funding, and the most leadership attention. The next 20% of initiatives get 30% of resources. These are important supporting moves or promising experiments that could become top-tier priorities if they prove successful. They get adequate resources to test and learn, but not enough to distract from your main bets. The bottom 70% of initiatives get paused or killed entirely. This feels brutal, but it's necessary. These projects might be good ideas, but they're not great ideas. They might create value, but they don't create strategic advantage. They might be worth doing someday, but they're not worth doing now. This formula forces the hard conversations that most organizations avoid. It makes trade-offs explicit instead of implicit. It creates clarity about what really matters and what's just nice to have. The key is to re-review this allocation monthly. As you learn more about your top bets, some will prove more valuable than expected and deserve even more resources. Others will prove less promising and should be demoted or killed. New opportunities will emerge that might deserve to enter the top tier. But the discipline of the formula prevents drift. You can't gradually add more initiatives without explicitly deciding what to remove. You can't increase resource allocation without explicitly deciding what gets less. You can't say yes to new opportunities without saying no to existing commitments. The calendar as strategy document. Your calendar is the most honest statement of your priorities. It shows where you actually spend time, not where you think you spend time or where you wish you spent time. If your calendar doesn't align with your strategy is just wishful thinking. Protecting calendar focus requires the same discipline as protecting resource focus. Block 2 120-minute deep work slots per week for each owner of your top initiatives. Make these blocks immovable. They get the same protection as board meetings or customer commitments. Leadership's job is to protect these blocks from the constant pressure to fill them with meetings, calls, and urgent requests. Most urgency is manufactured by poor planning and lack of focus. Real emergencies are rare. Everything else can wait until the deep work is done. Track completion of focus deliverables, not time spent. The goal isn't to fill the calendar blocks. It's to produce meaningful progress on your most important work. Measure outcomes, not activities. Celebrate breakthroughs, not busy work. Implement meeting standards that respect focus. Limit attendees to decision makers and essential contributors. Require that every meeting have a specific decision to make or problem to solve. Ban status updates and information sharing. Use asynchronous communication for those purposes. Most importantly, enforce the rule that no new work gets added without unfunding old work. This prevents the gradual accumulation of commitments that destroys focus over time. Every yes requires an explicit no. Every addition requires an explicit subtraction. The politics of saying no. The biggest obstacle to ruthless focus isn't analytical. it's political. People have pet projects they don't want to see killed. Departments have initiatives they've already committed to stakeholders. Leaders have promises they've made that feel impossible to break. The solution is to make the ranking criteria public and apply them consistently. Score every initiative by strategic fit and expected value. Publish the rankings to reduce politics and increase accountability. Fund the top, freeze the rest, and explain the logic clearly. When people push back, don't argue about the merits of their specific projects. Argue about the importance of focus itself. Show them examples of companies that won through concentration and companies that lost through diffusion. Help them understand that saying no to their good idea is saying yes to the organization's great opportunity. Create a stop-doing wall where you celebrate removals as much as additions. Make it clear that killing projects is as valuable as starting them. Tie promotions and bonuses to results on top bets, not to the number of initiatives someone manages. Use waiting lists for new ideas to resist impulse starts. When someone brings you a good idea that doesn't fit your current focus, don't reject it. Capture it for future consideration. This shows respect for their thinking while protecting your current priorities. The compound returns of concentration. When you implement genuine, ruthless focus, the results compound quickly. Throughput increases while cycle time decreases by 20 to 30% because resources aren't scattered across competing priorities. You start seeing early material wins on your main bets because they finally have the attention and resources they need. Team morale improves dramatically as people see visible progress on meaningful work. They stop feeling like they're spinning their wheels and start feeling like they're building something important. Confidence grows as execution improves and results become more predictable. The strategic benefits compound over time. You achieve category leadership in your chosen lane because you're the only player concentrating enough force to dominate it. Margins expand as waste disappears and efficiency improves. Hiring and funding become easier because you have a clear, compelling story about where you're going and how you'll get there. But focus without alignment is just individual excellence. To create organizational excellence, you need something more sophisticated, a way to cascade your concentrated strategy through every level of your organization so that everyone's focus serves the same larger purpose. The next chapter reveals how the most successful leaders turn strategic clarity into organizational movement, ensuring that every person's daily decisions advance the same coherent vision. Chapter 8, Strategy Cascade. Alan Mulally walked into Ford Motor Company in 2006, facing a crisis that would have broken most leaders. The company was hemorrhaging billions, market share was collapsing, and the culture was so toxic that executives would rather lie in meetings than admit problems existed. But Mulally had a secret weapon that had nothing to do with automotive expertise or financial engineering. He had learned something during his years at Boeing that most business leaders never discover: the difference between having a strategy and having an organization that can execute strategy. His first move seemed almost trivial. He created a simple one-page plan called One Ford and required every leader to carry a laminated copy. Then he did something that seemed even more mundane. He instituted weekly meetings where every executive had to report their progress using the same color-coded system: green for on track, yellow for at risk, red for problems. The magic wasn't in the plan or the meetings. The magic was in what happened when 200,000 employees suddenly understood how their daily work connected to the same larger purpose. When strategy stopped being something that happened in boardrooms and started being something that guided every decision, every handoff, and every priority. This is the power of Strategy Cascade, the ability to turn individual excellence into organizational movement. But most leaders get it backwards. They think cascade means control. In reality, it means clarity. The energy leak problem. Most organizations are bleeding energy through misalignment. Teams work incredibly hard on initiatives that don't reinforce each other. Departments optimize for metrics that conflict with other departments' metrics. Individuals pursue goals that make sense locally but create chaos globally. The symptoms are everywhere once you know how to look for them. Teams solve different problems simultaneously, creating solutions that don't integrate. Cross-functional conflicts escalate because people are literally working toward different definitions of success. Trust erodes because promises made by one team can't be kept due to dependencies on teams with different priorities. Customers feel these seams acutely. They experience your organization as a collection of disconnected parts rather than a coherent whole. Your sales process promises one thing, your product delivers another, and your support team operates under different assumptions than both. This isn't a people problem, it's a systems problem. Smart, well-intentioned individuals making rational local decisions that create irrational global outcomes. The solution isn't better people or clearer job descriptions. The solution is alignment that multiplies force instead of dissipating it. When alignment works, every action advances the same win. Cross-team handoffs become smoother because everyone understands the larger context. Velocity increases without burnout because people aren't working against each other. Energy that was previously wasted on internal friction gets redirected toward external competition. But alignment without autonomy creates a different problem: bureaucratic paralysis. The goal isn't to control every decision from the top. It's to give people enough context to make good decisions independently. The context revolution. Smart people don't want scripts. They want understanding. They don't want to be told exactly what to do. They want to understand why it matters and how it fits into the larger picture. They don't want micromanagement. They want the context that enables intelligent autonomy. This is where most Cascade efforts fail. Leaders try to solve alignment through control, creating detailed procedures and rigid hierarchies that slow decision-making and kill creativity. They confuse alignment with uniformity, assuming that everyone needs to do the same things in the same ways. But alignment isn't about uniformity, it's about coherence. Different teams can use different tactics as long as they're serving the same strategy. Different individuals can have different strengths as long as they're contributing to the same outcomes. The key is providing what military strategists call commander's intent, the purpose, key tasks, and desired end state that give people enough context to adapt intelligently when circumstances change. Intent unlocks creativity because people understand the constraints within which they can innovate. Guardrails prevent chaos without stifling initiative. When people understand the boundaries of acceptable action, they can move quickly and confidently within those boundaries. When they understand the criteria for good decisions, they don't need to escalate every choice to higher levels. This creates a compound advantage: faster decisions, better local optimization, and higher employee engagement. People feel trusted and empowered instead of controlled and constrained. They take ownership of outcomes instead of just completing tasks. The mini-kernel architecture. The most effective way to cascade strategy is through what I call mini-kernels, simplified versions of your main strategy kernel that each team creates for their specific domain. Each team writes their own diagnosis, guiding policy, and coherent actions, but they must align with and support the company-level kernel. This isn't about copying the corporate strategy word for word. It's about translating the corporate strategy into language and actions that make sense for each team's specific challenges and opportunities. The engineering team's mini-kernel will look different from the marketing team's mini-kernel, but both should clearly connect to the same overarching strategy. Each team publishes their mini-kernel on one shared page that everyone can see. This creates transparency and enables coordination. Teams can see how their work connects to other teams' work. Leaders can spot conflicts and overlaps before they become problems. The review process is crucial. Teams don't just create their mini-kernels in isolation. They present them to other teams and get feedback. This surfaces assumptions, identifies dependencies, and ensures that the pieces actually fit together into a coherent whole. Most importantly, the mini-kernels become living documents that evolve as teams learn and adapt. They're not carved in stone. They're working hypotheses that get tested and refined through execution. This preserves the adaptive tempo we discussed earlier while maintaining strategic coherence. The intent ritual system. Cascade requires more than documents. It requires rituals that embed the strategy into the organization's operating rhythm. The most powerful ritual is the intent restatement, opening every planning meeting by restating the commander's intent and asking how proposed actions advance the how to win. This seems simple, but it's transformative. It forces people to connect their tactical decisions to strategic outcomes. It prevents drift by constantly reinforcing the larger context. It makes strategy a living part of daily operations instead of an annual planning exercise. The closing ritual is equally important, ending meetings with commitments tied to specific boxes on the strategy page. This creates accountability and ensures that strategic intent translates into concrete action. People leave meetings knowing exactly how their work contributes to the larger mission. Between meetings, the question, how does this advance our how to win, becomes a constant filter for decision-making. It's not about second-guessing every choice. It's about maintaining strategic coherence while preserving operational flexibility. These rituals might feel repetitive at first, but repetition is the point. Strategy only works when it becomes automatic, when people internalize the logic so deeply that they don't need to consciously think about it. The rituals create this internalization through consistent practice. The OKR Integration Challenge. Many organizations try to cascade strategy through OKRs, objectives and key results, but they make a crucial mistake. They treat OKRs as strategy instead of as measurement of strategy. OKRs should measure whether actions advance the guiding policy. They shouldn't define the guiding policy. This distinction matters because it prevents metric myopia, the tendency to optimize for measurements instead of outcomes. When OKRs become the strategy, people start gaming the metrics instead of advancing the mission. They hit their numbers while missing the point. The correct relationship is hierarchical. Strategy defines what matters. OKRs measure progress on what matters. Each person should have 1 to 3 OKRs maximum, and each OKR should map clearly to one of the coherent actions in their team's mini-kernel. No orphan OKRs that don't connect to strategy. No OKRs that conflict with other OKRs. KPIs track health, while OKRs drive change. KPIs tell you whether your current performance is sustainable. OKRs tell you whether you're making progress toward your strategic goals. Both are necessary, but they serve different functions and shouldn't be confused. Monthly check-ins keep OKRs current and relevant. Quarterly resets allow for strategic adjustments based on learning. But the underlying strategy kernel should be more stable than the OKRs that measure it. Tactics can change quickly. Strategy should change deliberately. The traceability map. One of the most powerful tools for maintaining cascade integrity is the traceability map, a visual representation that shows how every OKR connects to a coherent action, how every coherent action supports the guiding policy, and how every guiding policy advances the overall strategy. This map serves multiple functions. It makes alignment visible so people can see how their work fits into the larger picture. It identifies gaps where important strategic elements aren't being measured or executed. It spots conflicts where different OKRs are working against each other. The map also becomes a communication tool that helps new employees understand how the organization works. Instead of learning about strategy through abstract presentations, they can see the concrete connections between daily work and strategic outcomes. Most importantly, the map enables intelligent pruning. When you can see all the connections visually, it becomes obvious which OKRs are truly essential and which are just nice to have. You can eliminate redundancy, resolve conflicts, and focus energy on what matters most. Post the map publicly and update it regularly. Make it a living document that reflects the current state of strategic execution. Use it in planning sessions to evaluate new initiatives and in review sessions to assess progress. The Satya Transformation. When Satya Nadella became CEO of Microsoft in 2014, he inherited a company that was losing relevance in a mobile-first, cloud-first world. The organization was fragmented, with different divisions pursuing conflicting strategies and competing for resources. Nadella's transformation wasn't built on reorganization or layoffs, it was built on clarity. He articulated a simple intent: empower every person and organization on the planet to achieve more. Then he cascaded this intent through 3 strategic pillars: productivity and business processes, intelligent cloud, and more personal computing. Each division translated these pillars into their own mini-strategies. The Office team focused on cross-platform productivity. The Azure team focused on hybrid cloud solutions. The Windows team focused on universal applications. Different tactics, same strategy. The results were dramatic. Revenue grew, stock price soared, and employee engagement improved significantly. But the real transformation was cultural. Microsoft became a company that could move quickly and coherently in the same direction instead of slowly and chaotically in multiple directions. The lesson isn't about Microsoft's specific strategy, it's about the power of Cascade done right. When everyone understands how their work contributes to the larger mission, individual excellence becomes organizational excellence. The Cascade failure modes. Even well-designed cascades can fail in predictable ways. The most common failure is OKR overload, too many objectives competing for attention and resources. The fix is ruthless. Cap OKRs at 3 per person and kill extras without exception. Intent drift is another common failure. Over time, the original strategy gets reinterpreted and diluted as it passes through multiple layers. The fix is constant reinforcement. Restate intent in every planning forum and correct drift immediately when you see it. Local optimization is the subtlest failure. Teams hit their individual OKRs while the overall system performance degrades. The fix is measuring system outcomes, not just silo wins. Track end-to-end customer experience, not just departmental efficiency. When Cascade works, the results are unmistakable. The company moves in one direction with speed. Customers perceive a unified experience instead of disconnected touchpoints. The category narrative coheres around your strategic play instead of fragmenting across multiple messages. But even perfect Cascade is just the beginning. The ultimate test of strategy isn't whether you can execute it once, it's whether you can keep executing it as markets change, competitors respond, and new challenges emerge. The final chapter reveals how to build the habits and systems that turn strategic excellence from a one-time achievement into a sustainable advantage that compounds over time. Chapter 9. Keep Winning. Steve Jobs died knowing something most leaders never discover. Strategy isn't an event, it's a system. It's not something you do once and forget. It's something you build once and improve forever. When Jobs returned to Apple in 1997, he didn't just create a turnaround plan. He created a strategic operating system that would outlast him. The 2x2 product grid wasn't just about simplifying the product line. It was about installing a decision-making framework that would prevent future complexity creep. The obsession with integration wasn't just about better user experience. It was about building switching costs that would compound over decades. Jobs understood that winning once is luck, winning repeatedly is system, and winning while you sleep, that's mastery. You've learned the components of this system throughout this book. Now it's time to understand how they work together to create something more powerful than any individual technique, compounding strategic advantage that gets stronger with time instead of weaker. The strategic operating system you've built. Let's be clear about what you've actually constructed over these 8 chapters. You haven't just learned some planning techniques or picked up a few decision-making tools. You've built a complete strategic operating system that transforms how you think, choose, and execute. Strategy equals coherent choices, not task piles. You now know the difference between real strategy and planning theater. You can spot the difference between operational effectiveness and strategic positioning. You understand that plans forecast while strategies choose, and that choosing is the hardest and most important work leaders do. Trade-offs create fit, and fit creates moats. You've learned to embrace constraints instead of avoiding them. You understand that saying no to good opportunities is how you say yes to great ones. You know that systematic fit, when all your activities reinforce each other, creates advantages that competitors can't copy without destroying their own business models. The one-pager turns clarity into daily decisions. You can compress complex strategies into simple frameworks that people can actually remember and use. You understand that simplicity isn't about dumbing things down. It's about making them smart enough to survive contact with reality. Adaptive tempo learns faster than rivals. You've built feedback loops that surface truth before your competitors even know what questions to ask. You can sense changes early, decide quickly, and adapt coherently without losing strategic direction. Focus and Cascade convert intent into impact. You know how to concentrate resources on the few bets that matter and align entire organizations around coherent action. You can turn individual excellence into organizational movement. But here's what makes this truly powerful. These aren't separate tools you use occasionally. They're integrated components of a system you use constantly. Each element reinforces every other element. Each cycle makes the next cycle faster and more effective. The freedom you've unlocked. This system doesn't just make you more effective, it makes you more free. You now control the game you play instead of letting the game control you. You can choose your battles and set the terms of engagement. You can say no without guilt because your no's are principled, not arbitrary. Most importantly, you've replaced doubt with a repeatable playbook. You don't have to reinvent strategy every quarter or second guess every decision. You have a framework that works regardless of your industry, your company size, or your competitive situation. This creates a different kind of calm under pressure. When crisis hits, and it will, you won't panic because you have a system for making sense of complexity. The one page reduces noise by giving you clear criteria for what matters. The feedback loops reduce fear of the unknown by surfacing information quickly. Evidence replaces hope as the foundation for your confidence. Your relationships improve dramatically because you're operating from clarity instead of confusion. Inside your team, there's less conflict because everyone understands the context. There are fewer escalations because ownership is clear. There's more pride because wins are shared and connected to a larger purpose. With partners and customers, you can make consistent promises and deliver consistent results. Your negotiations become easier because your no's are principled. People understand why you can't do certain things, which makes them trust you more on the things you can do. Trust compounds into referrals as people experience your reliability over time. Your new strategic capabilities. You can now do things that seemed impossible when you started this book. You can articulate a one-sentence strategy that anyone can repeat and use to make decisions. You can build a one-page kernel with 3 to 5 coherent actions that actually reinforce each other instead of competing for resources. You can reallocate resources toward the few bets that matter without getting paralyzed by politics or analysis. You can install loops that surface truth fast enough to matter. You can align teams with simple cascades and intent rituals that preserve autonomy while ensuring coherence. But the real magic happens when you practice these capabilities consistently. Each decision becomes easier because you're building fit instead of fighting it. Each cycle of feedback accelerates learning because you're asking better questions and designing better tests. Each success attracts better talent, partners, and terms because reputation compounds. This is how strategy becomes sustainable competitive advantage, not through one brilliant insight or one perfect plan, but through the compound returns of systematic excellence. The Jobs Masterclass in Strategic Compounding. Steve Jobs provides the ultimate case study in how strategic systems compound over time. When he returned to Apple, the company was 90 days from bankruptcy with a confusing product line that nobody wanted. By the time he died 14 years later, Apple was the most valuable company in the world with a product ecosystem that customers couldn't imagine leaving. This wasn't the result of one great product or one brilliant marketing campaign. It was the result of focused choices that reinforced each other over more than a decade. The decision to focus on a few products enabled deeper integration. Deeper integration created better user experiences. Better user experiences justified premium pricing. Premium pricing funded superior components and materials. Superior components enabled even better integration. The flywheel kept accelerating. Each trade-off strengthened the system. By refusing to license the operating system, Apple maintained control over the entire experience. By limiting product variety, they could optimize manufacturing and inventory. By controlling both hardware and software, they could create features that competitors couldn't match. The one-page level clarity enabled ruthless execution. Everyone at Apple could explain the strategy in simple terms, create beautifully designed, deeply integrated products that just work. This clarity traveled through every decision, from component selection to retail store layout to advertising campaigns. The result was a durable moat that competitors still struggle to cross more than a decade after Jobs' death. Customers don't just buy Apple products, they buy into the Apple ecosystem. Switching costs are enormous because everything works better together. The brand commands premium pricing because the experience justifies the cost. This is what strategic systems can achieve when they're built thoughtfully and executed consistently. Not just short-term wins, but long-term dominance that compounds over time. Your 90-minute strategic foundation. You don't need months or years to start building your own strategic system. You need 90 minutes and the discipline to begin. Block 90 minutes today, not tomorrow, not next week, today. Treat this like the most important meeting of your quarter because it is. Turn off notifications, close your door, and run the kernel sprint you learned in Chapter 4. Spend 15 minutes on diagnosis. List 10 observations about your competitive situation, then collapse them into 3 causal truths. What are the fundamental forces shaping your market? What's really driving customer behavior? What's the root cause of your biggest challenges or opportunities? Write these in plain English that a 9th grader could understand. Spend 10 minutes on guiding policy. Write one sentence that narrows the game and names a trade-off. How will you create advantage? What will you accept in exchange for that advantage? What capability will you build to make this policy work? Test it by imagining a real decision you'll face next month. Does your policy give you clear guidance? Spend 20 minutes on coherent actions. Pick 3 to 5 moves that reinforce each other and advance your policy. Assign owners to each action. Set start dates and kill criteria. Identify the leading indicators you'll watch to know if you're making progress. Remember, verbs, not adjectives. Specific, not vague. Spend the remaining time drafting your 7-block page. Diagnosis, where to play, how to win, trade-offs, coherent actions, leading indicators, owners, and deadlines. 1 sentence per box maximum. No jargon, no exceptions, no fine print. Then book a 60-minute team review for this week. Present your draft, get feedback, and make 1 concrete resource allocation decision based on your new kernel. Move 1 budget line, reassign 1 person, or kill 1 project that doesn't strengthen your strategic fit. This isn't about perfection, it's about momentum. You can refine your kernel over time, but you can't refine what doesn't exist. Start with something real, even if it's not perfect. The compound freedom ahead. Here's what happens when you commit to this system and practice it consistently. You stop drowning in busy work and start winning on purpose. You stop reacting to whatever seems urgent and start creating the future you actually want. Your decisions get faster because you have clear criteria. Your execution gets cleaner because everyone understands the context. Your results get better because you're concentrating force instead of spreading it thin. Most importantly, you get your life back. You stop working nights and weekends on activities that don't matter. You stop feeling guilty about saying no to opportunities that don't fit. You stop second-guessing every choice because you have a framework that works. The system gets smarter while you sleep because it's designed to learn and adapt. Each cycle surfaces new information. Each decision builds more fit. Each success attracts better opportunities. This is the ultimate payoff of strategic thinking. Not just better business results, but a better way of working and living. More profit, more time, more calm, more clarity, more confidence, more control over your destiny. You have the tools, you have the framework, you have the examples, you have 90 minutes today. The only question left is whether you'll use them. Choose your game, commit your force, take the first step. Small, real moves today beat big imaginary plans tomorrow. The future belongs to those who choose it deliberately, execute it systematically, and improve it relentlessly. Your strategic advantage starts now.